Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on The Two Gentlemen of Verona, and we get to hear from Julia again today in Act 1, Scene 2. So the things that we know so far, the two gentlemen of Verona are Valentine and Proteus, and Valentine is like of the mind and wants to go see the world, so he has left to go see the world. Proteus is of the heart and is in love with Julia and had sent a letter to Julia, which apparently Julia didn't give him any money, didn't give Speed the messenger any money for, so Speed the messenger was a little upset about that and wanted to get money out of Proteus, and that was like a whole thing and a debate about sheep. But here in Act 1, Scene 2, we are with Julia and her lady-in-waiting, Lucetta. Lucetta has the letter and was sort of taunting Julia about her suitors a little bit earlier in the scene, and then brought up the letter, but Julia was like so, I don't know, in a snit at that point that she sent Lucetta away with the letter and then was like, crap, I really wanted to read that letter. So she calls Lucetta back and is like, so is it almost dinner time? And Lucetta's like, maybe. And she sort of like drops the letter on the floor, and Julia's like, what's that you dropped? And Lucetta's like, nothing. And then there's this whole thing about like, you shouldn't throw away the papers that mean so much to you, and you should be singing songs and blah, 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 blah. Finally, Julia gets her hands on the letter, but is in this little like back and forth sort of spat with Lucetta about, about like the responsibilities of people. But it's like heightened farcical type language. They're not actually angry at each other. They're playing angry at each other, that sort of a thing, blah, blah, blah. Well, you should read this. Well, I want to read this kind of a thing back and forth. But it gets to the point where Julia is in such a huff about it that she rips up the letter and like throws it. And Lucetta on her way out the door is like, yeah, she's acting this way now, but she's dying for another letter of such ilk. And Lucetta leaves, and Julia says, nay, would I were so angered with the same. Oh, hateful hands, to tear such loving words, injurious wasps to feed on such sweet honey, and kill the bees that yield it with your stings. I'll kiss each several paper for amends. Look, here is writ, kind Julia. Unkind Julia, as in revenge of thy ingratitude, I throw thy name against the bruising stones, trampling contemptuously on thy disdain. And here is writ, love-wounded Proteus. Poor wounded name. My bosom, as a bed, shall lodge thee till thy wound be thoroughly healed, and thus I search it with a sovereign kiss. Twice or thrice was Proteus written down. Be calm, good wind, blow not a word away till I have found each letter in the letter, except mine own name, that some whirlwind bear unto a ragged, fearful, hanging rock, and throw it thence into the raging sea. Lo, here in one line is his name writ twice, poor forlorn Proteus. Passionate Proteus, to the sweet Julia, that I'll tear it with, and yet I will not. So prettily he couples it to his complaining names. Thus I will fold them, one upon another. Now kiss, embrace, contend, do what you will. So it's a cute, fun little piece, and probably much more fun if you actually have a letter to play with, but I didn't want to go that far with props today. So she still hasn't gotten to read the letter, is what this boils down to. She, in her own fit of pique, ripped up this thing, and then as soon as Lucetta's gone, she's like, crap, I wanted to read that. So she's like, I'm such an idiot for ripping it up, and she starts like grabbing the scraps of paper and trying to piece the letter back together, but she doesn't want to see her own name because she's mad at herself, and she's like, I should be punished, I should be wounded, I should be thrown into the sea, all that kind of stuff. But every time she sees Proteus' name in there, he's wounded, love-wounded Proteus, and poor forlorn Proteus, and passionate Proteus. So he starts to, even just these little snippets, she hasn't gotten to read the whole letter, but these little snippets about him, she's starting to fall in love with him from just these weird little one-liners out of the letter, to the point where at the end of it, she sees his name a couple of times with hers, which she was going to rip her name out of the letter anywhere she found it. But she's like, actually, no, I'm going to make my name and his name kiss and do nasty things together on this piece of paper. At which point Lucetta walks back in and she's like, dinner's ready. And Julia's like, what? Oh, okay, I'm coming. And like, she drops all the paper, and Lucetta's like, so you're just gonna leave all of this here? And Julia's like, well, if it's so important to you, you pick it up. And there's a little bit more back and forth on that before they decide that they really need to go get to dinner, because Julia's father is waiting for them and getting a little impatient. And that's the end of Act 1, Scene 2. So far, very fun play, kind of farcical, kind of silly. We've got Julia falling in love with Proteus, who's already in love with her. We're going to check in more with Valentine later and find out what happens on all of his travels. And yeah, we're just barely scratching the surface on this one. So come on back tomorrow for more. I'll see you then. Mwah.